Have you ever walked out of a room feeling like you had to explain yourself just to be understood? Like you had to defend every decision, justify every word, and still people didn't get it? What if I told you that the most powerful person in that room was the one who said the least? There's a subtle shift in energy when someone stops trying to explain. You notice it right away. They're no longer playing the game of seeking approval. They've withdrawn their energy from the noise, and suddenly, ironically, they hold more presence than anyone else. That's the paradox. Silence speaks louder. It creates gravity. We're trained from childhood to explain, justify, and over-communicate. But in the real world, especially in moments of pressure, the one who stays grounded and doesn't react becomes the axis around which everything turns. Think of someone you respect, a leader, a mentor, a figure you admire. Are they the kind of person who tries to explain themselves all the time? Or are they the ones who pause, look you straight in the eye and say very little, but make you feel everything? Explanations are often insecurity in disguise, and the mind that needs constant validation will always talk more than it listens. When you stop explaining, something shifts. People lean in. They start to wonder, what does he know that I don't? Why isn't he trying to defend himself? That curiosity becomes your power. You've taken yourself out of the role of a performer and stepped into the role of the observer. And the observer always has more leverage. So if you've ever felt invisible, overlooked, or unheard, it might be because you've been trying too hard to be seen, heard, and understood. Real presence doesn't announce itself. It arrives in silence, and it dominates without effort. People chase clarity from others because they don't have it within themselves. But powerful minds, they live with mystery. They're not obsessed with being understood. They're obsessed with understanding. When you stop explaining, you become harder to read. And that's exactly what pulls people in. You shift from being predictable to being a puzzle. And in a world where everyone is screaming for attention, the person who remains unreadable becomes unforgettable. There's danger in over-explaining. Every word gives away a piece of your strategy, your emotions, your mindset. And when people figure you out, they stop respecting you. They start managing you. But if they never quite know what you're thinking, they hesitate. They step lighter. They consider your silence before making a move. That's influence. Explaining constantly puts you on the defensive. But when you stop explaining, your energy reverses. It becomes magnetic. People don't just listen to you, they try to decode you. And those who try to decode you will rarely challenge you, because the fear of the unknown is always stronger than the clarity of weakness. This is what dominance looks like in its quietest form. It's not about raising your voice. It's about lowering your availability. So the next time someone demands an explanation, ask yourself, Do they deserve to know, or do they just want control? Because once you realize that silence creates space and space creates gravity, you'll understand why the strongest minds don't try to fill it. They let it pull. Explaining is a habit we pick up early. At school, at home, in relationships, we're taught that we owe people our thoughts. That if we don't explain, we're being rude, cold, or difficult. But what if the opposite is true? What if over-explaining is the real weakness? What if it's the mask of someone trying too hard to be accepted? Here's the thing. People who are truly confident, they don't explain much. Not because they don't care, but because they don't need approval to validate their choices. They move based on principle, not permission. And when you live that way, people either respect your boundaries or they remove themselves. Every explanation is a negotiation of your power. It says, "Let me prove I'm worthy." But dominance doesn't ask for approval. It states calmly, "This is what it is." Look at the most respected leaders, thinkers, and strategists. Their power didn't come from oversharing. It came from clarity, simplicity, presence. They don't dress their words to be liked. They speak to be understood. And when that's not possible, they stay silent. Because explaining can often invite challenge, but silence, it closes the door before doubt can enter. This doesn't mean you should never communicate. It means your words should be measured, deliberate, valuable. So the next time you feel the urge to explain, pause. Ask yourself, am I explaining to express or to impress? Because the moment you stop performing for validation is the moment you start owning the room. If you're ready to own every room you walk into, subscribe now. The next move is silence. There's something magnetic about a person who doesn't explain. They enter the room with calm, but the silence around them feels charged, like the air before a storm. You want to understand them. You want to know what they're thinking, but they're not giving it away. And that is dominance. Because real power doesn't show off, it withholds, and that withholding drives curiosity. See, the more you explain, the more they measure you, they size you up, they form opinions, they analyze every word, every tone, every justification you give. But the less you say, the more they wonder. Mystery creates status. It makes people fill in the blanks, and they almost always fill it with power because we fear what we don't fully understand. That's why silence is a strategy. In relationships, in business, in conflict, the one who speaks less often holds more leverage. They don't expose their emotions. They don't offer blueprints. They simply observe, wait, respond only when needed. This restraint gives you space to think, to assess, to choose power over panic. And slowly the room begins to shift. People start leaning in when you talk. They pause when you pause. They adjust to your rhythm, not the other way around. That's when you know you've flipped the dynamic. You're no longer chasing attention. You're commanding it. You're not trying to be understood. You're choosing who deserves to understand you. And when that happens, the room isn't just listening, they're following. People don't notice when you over-explain, but they feel it. They feel your insecurity. They sense the subtle desperation in your tone, the need to be liked, understood, justified. And once they sense that, the dynamic shifts. Instantly, you become the one chasing validation, not holding presence. See, when you explain yourself too much, you lose the frame. You give away the authority of interpretation, and now they control the story. That's why silence isn't awkward, it's strategic. It makes people sit with their own assumptions. It forces them to reflect, to wonder what you're really thinking, and that unknown keeps you powerful. It's the difference between someone who needs to be heard and someone who chooses when to be heard. And that choice, it creates gravity, because when you speak less, every word becomes more. You're not just adding noise to the room, you're cutting through it. And that contrast is everything. Now the silence is no longer empty, it's loaded. People hang on your words. They quote you. They wait for you to speak because they know when you do, it matters. That's what dominance looks like. Not volume, not anger, not constant justification, just presence, quiet, unshakable presence. And that kind of presence, it doesn't demand respect, it earns it without saying a thing. In a world obsessed with being heard, real power belongs to those who know when to stay silent. They don't rush to justify. They don't explain their every move, because they've realized something most people never do. Silence makes you unpredictable, and unpredictability makes you powerful. They walk into rooms and shift the energy, not with their words, but with their calm. Not by reacting, but by watching. And when they finally speak, everyone listens, because they've learned that the more you talk, the less weight your words carry. But when you hold back, each sentence becomes a weapon, each pause a signal of control. So here's the truth. If you feel the need to constantly explain yourself, you're still trying to be accepted. But when you stop needing validation, when you realize you don't owe anyone an explanation for your peace, that's when you start to dominate, not through noise, but through presence, not by convincing, but by becoming. So next time you hesitate to speak, ask yourself, what if saying nothing is the most powerful move I can make? And if this hit something in you, if it felt like this video was quietly written about you, then don't walk away from this moment, because the people who get this, they're not just viewers, they're building something real with us. Subscribe now, not because I said so, but because something in you whispered, I need more of this.